Hello and welcome to Grit and Glamour, an interview series featuring honest conversations with fashion changemakers on what it really takes to lead and succeed. I'm your host, Ruby Veridiano, and today we're going to be talking about prosperity and how to claim it this year in 2021. I know that I often talk about sustainable fashion, but I'm actually a really big fan of financial sustainability too. So today I'm coming out as an undercover finance nerd, but you know what? I wasn't always this way. The subject of finances used to stress me out and give me a lot of anxiety, but as soon as I healed my relationship with it and learned how to control my money instead of the other way around, it changed my life drastically. That's why I'm so excited to welcome on today's show, Jennifer Navarro-Marroquin of Claiming Prosperity and Community Wealth. She is going to be helping us to understand the connection between wellness and holistic healing, as well as financial education, why those two are connected and is really integral in our roles as change makers and to really overall have a good quality of life. So, without further ado, let's bring on Jen onto the show so we could talk about what it really means to claim prosperity, how to do it, and also, since this is a fashion show after all, why financial literacy is really chic. So let's bring her on. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Ruby. Oh, good morning.
Good morning. So I'm where I'm at. I'm in France, and you are tuning in from
California, Bay Area.
Bay Area, where my heart is still living, even though regardless of where my body is. So I know it's bright and early where you're at. So I appreciate you coming onto the show looking like a ray of sunshine. I love seeing this smile, but you also have something going on right after this, which we're going to talk about later. Yeah. But I know that money is a very sensitive topic. And I saw one of your posts actually that says that 45% of women are uncomfortable talking about money, but we're not one of those 45%. Now, you are a holistic healing practitioner and you're also a finance expert. So tell me and help me break down the connection between those two sides of your work and how they're interconnected.
Absolutely. And you know what, Ruby, this is a really amazing question. And a lot of times people just don't get it. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to explain this. But yes, I do have a holistic healing practice and I've had it for quite some time. And when you're in these spaces with people on such an intimate level, you really see their fears, the things that hold them back, a lot of insecurities. And I noticed in working with people one-on-one that money was coming up consistently, like the lack piece of it, the feeling of not safe of it. And that stood with me and it still stays with me to this day. And that's something that I continue to work with people on a spiritual, energetic level. And at one point when my husband and I were getting married, we got married in 2012. And there's something that happens when two individuals come together as a family financially. So there was a lot of things going on. And I just started going out on this quest of like, what is this? I really don't understand money. And I got into spaces and places where in most cases, women of color don't normally go into. And I started learning all of these things. And I was like, why don't we know these things? Why don't we know these things? And just being the person that I am, I got licensed. I went into the financial industry because I was like, I have to empower my community. I have to share this information, right? When you drink the good water, you share it. So that's what I did. And for a very long time, I kept it separate. The work that I did intimately with people holistically and the financial services work that I did. In 2012, I had this huge 2018, I had a huge aha moment of like, why am I keeping this separate? Why is it separate? Because every day when I went out in the field to talk to people about their money, it was super emotional. There was a lot of trauma around it. And I was like, I need to build a bridge. I need to build a bridge. And that's how Claiming Prosperity was born, because money is emotional. It's a spiritual way, and how we interact with money and this energy, it really has everything to do with where we decide to put our money and how long, and the plan that we stick with, and if we thrive or not in our lives.
Absolutely. And I the key word there that you said was trauma. And I think as folks who are immigrants or folks of color, I think there's a lot of baggage, right, on how to manage money. What is kind of your experience and observations around specifically immigrants when they're talking about money?
A lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of don't rock the boat kind of a thing, because, you know, we come into a country that it's not ours. And if we rock the boat too much, or if someone sees that we have too much, then there's this fear that it could be taken away. So there's a lot of that, and it's deeply rooted even before we come into this country, right? Even into our, like, you know, we're from the Philippines, so there's that 600 years of colonization there. What does that do to us? So there's the familial, and then there's the ancestral, and then there's the migration, and then there's the assimilation. So there's all of these things.
Right. It's heavy. So that's why no wonder if we're not good with money, or if you haven't started your healing journey with money yet, like, we shouldn't feel bad about it, right? Because I'm going to be transparent. I don't feel like I healed my relationship with money until like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I felt so late in the game. But at the same time, it's just that, like you said, contextualizing that there's a lot of baggage there. And no matter where you are in the journey, you could always choose to start and turn a new page.
Yes.
And I love that you're like me. It's like what we have in common is part magic and part method, right? Here's like the stuff that kind of lives in, like, you know, the spiritual kind of emotional realm. But then here's the practical stuff that's going to bring us foundation in real life so that it's actionable.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to claim prosperity? And why is this one of the most important steps into the beginning of our healing journey with finances?
Yes. So those two words were chosen specifically, very, very consciously, claiming and prosperity, because it's an action, right? When you just talk about claiming prosperity, it's actually an action that puts ownership on that individual claiming, right? It's this present tense action. And prosperity was it. I didn't feel comfortable with riches. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I didn't feel comfortable with wealth as a word. I didn't feel comfortable with millionaire, because I didn't feel it encapsulated the whole human experience. And the whole human experience is prosperity, to prosper in emotions and spirit and fulfillment and purpose, in relationships, in money. All of that is they do this beautiful dance. They're not exclusive of each other. And when we keep them separate, that's when crisis happens. So if we're actively every day in this present action of claiming it, standing in our value, then our life starts to shift and change.
You know what? It's Saturday, but I feel like I'm at church. Just taking me to church. Yeah. So I want to also stress that claiming prosperity, as you said, it's a holistic view, right? You know, like prospering and like our life experience, our quality of life. And it's not necessarily about how much money we have, but how well we're actually dealing with our relationship with it and how well we're managing it, right? Because I've seen clips of like people like T-Pain or Allen Iverson who was given like millions of dollars, and because they didn't know how to manage it, they lost it like that. So I think that I just want to emphasize for my listeners that it's not necessarily about how much you have, but just how well you are dealing with it and how you're managing your budget, right?
Exactly. And there's just something on that really quick, Ruby. As a society, I think we have to really check in how much we objectified money to be the end all. But there's other ways of value: time freedom, flexibility, doing work. Why do we not put value on that? Why is it only the bank account? Right.
Like even geographic freedom, right? Like now that a lot of people are working remotely, geographic freedom and the ability to move around and travel is also a form of wealth. So thank you for clarifying. Now, Jen, a lot of my listeners identify as artists, creatives, and activists. Okay. Now, in my 20s, who identified with these labels or these types of identities, I made the mistake. I feel in hindsight, I realized that it was a mistake of kind of looking at prioritizing money in my 20s as like inauthentic or capitalistic. There was a lot of guilt involved in like, you know, I shouldn't be worried about money because that's not what it's about, right? Like I felt like I was selling my soul, so to speak. So I realize now that is the only regret I have in my entire career, is not learning this earlier. So can you help me break down why thinking about money in this way is inherently unhealthy and also counterproductive to the change that we want to make as creatives and activists?
Yes. See, I see absolutely, because these are the good questions. These are the questions that are going to transform our lives. I live with an artist. He has come a long way. I have many, many activist friends. I am in the spiritual world. So that money monk mindset is a real thing. So bottom line, if you're spending $1 or whatever currency any time of the day, you are participating in capitalism. So capitalism has been this very, very bad word, right? And how can we switch it in a way where we're using it as a tool of good, right? Edward Villanueva, he is this really well-known writer now about decolonizing wealth. His book is called Decolonizing Wealth. And he comes from a Native American spiritual tradition. So what he says is that capitalism in our money society, if it's used right, we can actually deconstruct the whole system in a way that's aligned with our values, pretty much from the belly of the beast, right? So we can actually use money as a tool for good, depending on who you are and have it align with your values. I know who you are, Ruby. You're going to use your money to do good things, to help other people, to create social impact, to create platforms like this. This is what money can do for us. And it needs to flow. Like money in itself is a current. It's called currency. So how is this flow coming into your life? And if you have this negative association with money, most likely it's not wrapping back to you because you're just letting it go, letting it go, letting it go. But you need to close the circle. A current always has to have a close for it to have that consistent flow.
Absolutely. And I think it might have been Oprah that I first heard this from, that like money is essentially just energy.
Yeah.
And just, it helps us become more of who we really are. So if you're a bad person and you have money, you're going to do a lot of bad things because you can afford to do a lot of bad things. But if you're a good person with good intentions, then money also helps you to do more of that good into the world. So I think that thinking about money in that way is more productive, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about, on the subject of creating flow and creating good things with our money, let's talk about intergenerational wealth. Why is this one of the most revolutionary and one of the most important healing acts of service that we can do for our families and our communities?
Yes. In most immigrant communities, you're not going to hear that word, or those two words, intergenerational wealth. But it's a real game changer, right? In just one generation, things can have a drastic change, right? In just one generation, they'll have like this beautiful portrait of Ruby over the mantle because you literally changed the trajectory of your family story. So I think that intergenerational wealth starts first from conversation, how a family's relationship is with money. Like you, Ruby, I know when you start a family, having and talking about money is going to be something that's commonplace. It's going to be something that's empowering. It's something that you talk about around the dinner table. It's something that you use as an empowerment tool for your family. So that starts to get programmed. It starts to get programmed, and people have will start to have a different association with money as a practice and in general, and therefore create different results and action towards money moving forward. So there's that piece of us having conversations and just creating a different charge with money. That's first and foremost. And then the second piece of it is really creating tangible things that can be handed down from generation to generation. Establishing things like trusts. Oh my gosh, like amazing for even one generation. That's a huge game changer. It could pay for the next generation's college. It could be down payments for the next generation's first piece of real estate. Life insurance. Why is that such a dirty word in the immigrants, in the immigrant community? That's how, not to idolize a certain population, but that's how, some of our Caucasian counterparts have brought down intergenerational wealth, not even having to touch the seed money at a very, very just affordable, like very easy entry way, right? So there's those really, really tangible pieces. And then also whatever retirement accounts that do get passed down from generation to generation, having them set up so they have the most tax advantage for the family continuing on.
Yes. Now, I see intergenerational wealth and the creation of it as like giving your family a different starting line.
Yes.
Right. Because I think that obviously, like, because we are immigrants and our parents, or maybe our parents' parents came with nothing or very little, there wasn't a lot to pass down. And as a result, like for me, for example, I worked 3 jobs just to keep myself in college. If I didn't have to work those 3 jobs, I just wonder how much more I could have done. So I think that prioritizing it allows us to own our home so that when the neighborhoods get gentrified, you don't get kicked out as easily, right? There is a lot of tangible things. So I appreciate you breaking that down and helping us to understand why this is an important thing to prioritize. Now, I also want to share and say that I think you'd agree with me that financial education is normally inaccessible. They make it complicated on purpose. Why do you think that is?
So, I think that serves a purpose for some people, to be like this expert that makes everything so difficult. For the average person, finances is actually really simple. But what you actually have to do is do the back end work first.
Yeah.
Really find out why, what you want, and really find value in doing this work. But we're not analysts. We're not having to make projections unless you're going to be, most people don't really want to be a day trader. They may have some skin in the game as far as managing their own stocks, but that's even more advanced than most people. So the average person, it can be very, very, very simple and really down to like 4 main principles. So it's just about knowing that, cutting the noise, and just not letting too much information cause paralysis. We actually have to take action as soon as possible, because the greatest asset that we have in the financial game is time.
Yeah.
And the amount of time that we have for compounding. So the sooner that we can just get over that, the sooner that we can cut the noise and just know, hey, for me, I need to understand what I want to do about money, and then learn those really, really basic principles that it involves everyone that deals with money. It actually is easy. It's an easy way for us to have that easier entry in there. And I think that it's meant to do that, to actually keep people a little disempowered, to feel like, stay kind of
in their lane, right? To keep people in their lane, so to speak. Yeah. And especially women. I think that women have been disadvantaged when it comes to talking about finances, because culturally it has not normalized for women to like take charge of finances and managing the finances, even though a lot of women often take care of the spending in households. So let's talk about how women's empowerment is deeply tied to economic empowerment. And why do you think this is specifically for women of color?
Yes. And just to make a point before I go and answer this question, women in America weren't able to own their own credit card until 1974. That was the year I was born. So they weren't even to have their name on their credit card. So women and money and empowerment around money is a hugely transformative topic. And we've only come, 50 years? And look how far we've come. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 50? But in a way where women and money as a tool for empowerment, it's such an important topic, and especially for women of color, because I think it gives us a voice. I've seen it with my clients. When they have more resources, when they're feeling empowered, they're emboldened to make.
Look at all those women that you empower.
Oh, look at these women, all of these.
There's my bestie Paloma.
Yay! Paloma. She's amazing. She's amazing. So, it really makes, it empowers us to have a voice. It empowers us to make really, really important decisions, not just for us, but that impacts the people that we love, that impacts our community. And I wrote this in the post, and I really do mean it. When one woman is empowered with money, that is not just that individual woman, because women share. Like, that's just who we are. We hold so much. So when one woman is empowered with their money, their family is, and their community is. So how amazing is that?
That's why we're doing this show today. Everybody, come to this well, drink from this cup, and we're all still working our way up, right? I feel like there's so much that I'm still learning, and but I think that just the fact that I'm on the journey to learning, I hope will inspire women who are watching or listening to start that journey, to just take the first step.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And it's about it. I always say this, it's not about perfection, progress. Those micro incremental changes, when you look back, it's like a 180, right?
Yeah.
So let's not get hung up on perfection, because
Yeah.
let's get real. This is going to be messy. It's going to be raw. There's going to be times where you're just like, what am I doing?
Oh my God.
And
Yes.
allow yourself to be, just give yourself that permission to be raw
Yeah.
and messy, and just
Yeah,
let
I want to shout out
it.
Bernadette Anat, okay, of at Hey Berna, because I started, when I really decided that I really wanted to do this, I contacted her and she made me look at all of my money monsters, including my student loans that give me like, tremors in my heart. But actually having a look at all of that wasn't as scary as I thought, but I was like, psyching myself out. Like I was like having to do breathing exercises before I got started. But when I actually wrote those numbers down, I was like, okay, it's not that bad. I was thinking of them as like really big monsters, but I'm like, okay, there's a plan. I can create a plan around this. It's fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Make it bigger than it is.
yeah, totally.
Way bigger.
Yes. So now 2020 was obviously tough financially on a lot of people. So it might be, maybe a little bit superfluous to talk about prosperity in 2021. However, I think that it's important, right? That's a way that we're going to look at this, thing and heal it. So for those who do want to start their journey into claiming prosperity, what are the initial steps that you would recommend for them to take?
Yeah. So first and foremost is for you, not you, but whoever that individual is that's feeling called or feeling a spark right now, is just to daydream. That's if there were no limits and your life can be anything that it could be, what would it be? What would it look like? And everyone's different. And I know that you have many creatives that are part of your circles. You can make that an art piece. You can make that a vision board. You can draw. You can write poetry about it. Make it fun. Make it engaging. But really asking that question first: if there was no limits and anything was possible, what would I want to see, do, be, and have? Right? And just really sit with that. Just let it ruminate for a while, and then stepping into that value piece. I deserve this. This is something I deserve, and then that starts to create this emotional charge for action, no matter what that action is. Maybe it's not budget right away. Maybe it's just, looking at bank accounts more regularly. Maybe it's listening to podcasts. Right? There's not a cookie cutter way. Find what works for you. But my suggestion is make it fun, make it dynamic, make it alive, and make it something that means something for you. Because that's going to be the charge that brings all of the money pieces to you in a good way.
Yeah. So in other words, it's about changing the way that we feel about money, because there's a lot of people who look at money and they think that it's, a demon, or right. Like we hear that a lot growing up, right? Like that, money is, the thing that only bad people have, or like, especially as activists, right? Like we demonize money, or at least I did when I was younger. And I feel like that's totally unhealthy. So just, I guess looking at money as a friend, making friends with money.
Exactly. I love that. Making friends with money.
Yes. And now once you become friends with your money and you start to kind of heal your like money mentality, what are other concrete steps towards financial literacy should people start to think about?
Yeah. It's really, I think the first step is to engage in this just principle, or actively engage in this principle of being a good manager of your money. That's first and foremost. Seeing the money coming in, being a good manager of your money means you understand money coming in and you understand money going out in the very basic. We can't talk about growing your money if you don't know what money's coming in and you don't know what money is coming out. So that's the first step, is how do I get a handle on my money? Doing that big B word in finance, which I call budget. A lot of people are like, budget. But budget, I mean, my budget is dynamic, it's fun, it's living, right? And it's something that I check in with every month. So if you haven't done it, really look at that money coming in, money going out, look at the budget, see, get a feel, get a sense of where you're spending your money. And I think it's kind of hard for us right now, a little harder, because we're not spending cash necessarily. It's all going through electronic. So it's easy for people to lose track. of where they're spending their money. And there's a lot of things that are automated, those subscriptions. So that's also I'm like, okay, how many subscriptions do you have and are you still using them? Because when things are automated, people forget it's coming out of your bank account every month. The extra $100. Was that?
That happened to me. I was like, wait a second, I'm not using this anymore.
Every year, I think, check in with that. So that, and then also just understanding that how, where your debt, where your credit is at any time. I think if you haven't looked at your credit score, start to look at that. If there needs to be some repair, do it sooner rather than later, because our credit score can be used as a leveraging piece. Like a lot of people don't think that. They just think, oh, I could buy something. No, that credit score, treat it like gold, because it can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in a span of your whole lifespan, right? So think of it as leverage, not just I can spend on this credit.
Yeah. And I want to point out, budgeting in the beginning used to be this scary task for me. But now that I've gotten so much more used to it, I actually think about it as like a wellness session for myself. It's like a form of self-care. It's like it's part of my integrated self-care treatment. Like, yes, bring it on, budget. Like, let's grow this garden. Let's tend to this garden. Let's figure out where we can make more flowers and take out all the weeds, but just having some agency around what's going on with my bank accounts, I think also just has made a shift mentally. It's really improved my mental health. Really, I'm a lot more calm. I'm a lot more, at peace with things, because I know that every dollar or every euro, because of where I am, is assigned to an activity or an object.
Yes, and I love how you connected that to self-care, right? This is an act of self-care and self-love. And I think that when we look at our budget and we're budgeting on a consistent basis, the ease that comes, from that, after, like you're saying, that feeling actually frees us up creatively, because you have a lot of creatives. So when we have this like negative association, or we don't want to look at something, we're penting something up, that's actually using energy that can be used on creating, and bringing people together and living in your purpose.
Yes. And now in the conversation of ease and flow, I'm curious to know, because you work with a lot of clients and you help them to claim their prosperity and change their money mindset. So have you seen any, what have you observed in regards to maybe the change and earning potential of some of your clients before and after?
Huge. Like there's been clients I've worked with that have doubled their income within the span of a year. And it's because the ease comes in, like that feeling of ease. Like I said, like we're not using that energy to hold anything back. We're actually using it to build and to grow and to create. And it's a completely, when you're coming in that vibration of ease, it's a complete game changer. New opportunities start to come. Money starts to come. New work starts to come, because we're living our lives not from this lower vibration of fear and holding, but from this expanded vibration of creation and fulfillment. Completely different. And it's this work, claiming prosperity, it is transformative. It's transformational work. Right. And when we're talking about it and doing these ways of really standing in our value and claiming the prosperity, money, everything starts to come in. It's not just one thing. So I've seen huge shifts. Some women, 25%, 30%. That's also great. I mean, think about how that creates year after year after year. And with that, that's what we see with the money. But there's also the courage to build their own business. That's something, there's the courage and the ease to live their dreams, like travel more, buy their home, buy the next home. I mean, these are the tangible things, because they're feeling a different way and they've created an empowering relationship with their money, that these are the effects.
I love that. I love that. Now, I'm sure people who are listening are like, how can I claim my prosperity? You have some programs and some workshops even happening today, right after this conversation. So tell us more about what you've got coming up in the year or in the very near future that folks can tune into.
Absolutely. Yes. So today I'm excited. This is one of my favorite workshops out of the year. It's called Flip Your Money Script. And it's exactly what we're talking about today. Unfortunately, the registration has closed for it. But basically what we're doing is we're switching our paradigm around money. So we can have this different relationship with it, which will lead to different actions with money. So that's the spark workshop that I call of a transformational spark that people do as a first starter to create that relationship with money that they want. Next week, I have an Awakening the Inner Manifester workshop. So that's a tune in, turn on your potential and your manifesting abilities. Whatever you're calling in for yourself, it's really getting fine-tuned, being laser focused and magnetizing that to you. Right. So that's something that's going on next week. And next month, I'm actually going to be launching a group program where it's a group way to work with me. I usually work coaching people one-on-one, but I really like the group dynamic. So much can happen when group dynamics come in. Yes. So I love that. So tune in for more about that. And I'm launching a whole new service for business owners. So that's something that I'll be doing in February as well.
Awesome. Well, Jen, thank you so much. For the listeners who are now hooked and want to get more involved and engage with you, where can they find you?
So my website, claimingprosperity.com, and IG is also at Claiming Prosperity. Facebook, they're all the same.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for joining this with me. This is like church on a Saturday about, this actually very spiritual energy that we just happen to call money. So I appreciate you breaking this down with me and also hopefully starting this healing work that our community can do on this topic.
So Ruby, can I just say before we go, thank you for being who you are. I just really love what you do, the energy that you bring in, the intentionality, and you just make it all look so good. So thank you so much. And this was such a joy and such a pleasure. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, my mission is really to make sure that the next generation of women, right, are not making the same mistakes that I did, right? Or just to learn from us, now that we're the ates and titas of our community. It's okay, let me help to facilitate the work that I never got a chance to learn at an earlier age. And again, that's part of intergenerational wealth, right? Right?
Yep. So exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Jen, for joining me. And thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Grit and Glamour. I hope that you are inspired to blossom in your prosperity. And again, if you are curious about Jen's work, follow her on claimingprosperity.com and at Claiming Prosperity on Instagram. So thank you all for tuning in. And once again, here's to all the grit behind the glamour. We'll see you next time. Bye.